But, I want to begin our conversation. You've had a very interesting run in life, and I want to begin it by asking how you survived the last 3.5 years. How did you get through the pandemic, and how did it change you?
Okay, so I'm a boomer, so work-life balance wasn't really balanced.
Yeah.
Somewhat of a workaholic. Uh, Head of communications, I was in a crisis communication mode when the first when pandemic. We sent in one day we sent 1,300 employees home. We expect them to be coming back in a couple of weeks. We had meetings every day. And of course, you know the story at the end of that story. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in a year. It didn't happen in a year and a half. It took almost 2 years before we got our employees back into a hybrid environment. But what happened with me is I kind of recalibrated my life. I started walking. I do about 4 to 5 miles a day. I still do that. It's somewhat, it's very from a wellness perspective, but it's also from a mindset perspective has also been very helpful. I've also started meditating. I started that during COVID as well, and I've continued with that. And then the one surprise thing that happened during all of this was I actually wrote a book. I had started it previous to COVID. I do a blog. I do a blog on branding, and it kind of started off as a blog. And I thought, well, maybe it's a two-part, three-part blog. And then it got away from me. So I had the time because I do a fair bit of traveling. I've gotten back into getting back into airplanes on a regular basis. And so, yeah, my life is very different post COVID.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. If you were in front of a bunch of third grade students and one of them asked you, "What do you do for a living?" It's career day. How do you answer them?
Well, I'm responsible for communications, corporate communications. I was also responsible for marketing communications. So it's about being able to communicate both ways in the sense of understanding what our employees are looking for and to be able to communicate back to them from a business perspective and from a customer perspective as well. So sort of the conduit. You think of all the different communication channels out there. Somebody has to be able to fill those channels with content, and that's what I do.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I wanted to be a director. I wanted to make movies. That's kind of where I started. I actually started there, and I was also wanting to be an archaeologist. So,
Okay.
I mean, both very different, but I use both of those today.
So what was the movie that you loved the best as a kid? What really opened your fascination?
So the first movie I ever saw, and okay, this is going to date me, was The Sound of Music, and I was just overwhelmed. If you can remember some of those scenes, the big, huge images of mountains and the music, I was overwhelmed. I mean, the sensory was, as I said, was beyond my expectation. I had never, I grew up with black and white TV, so it didn't take a lot to make me feel that I was in a completely different world.
So let me ask you this. Take me back to where you were born and raised and how the seeds of communication and becoming an author and helping people, how did all of this grow into you?
So I always like to be the one that was, I mean, my sister and I grew up, well, my sister was younger than me, and I always like to be the orator. I like to always sort of be the one that was being in front of the stage. But I'm an introvert, which is really something that I had to get over because I was actually terrified in audiences. I was terrified in rooms with a lot of people. I get my energy level decreases quite quickly when I'm with a whole bunch of people because I have to perform, and as an introvert you do perform. So I've always been sort of a performer. Most people would go, "Oh, you're not an introvert. You're just joking." And it's because I have trained myself to be an extrovert.
So Who's been a hero for you in your life?
I've had several. I've always been attracted to older people in the sense of wisdom. I had the opportunity to know several people in their 90s. I had one dear friend he passed away at 104. And I wanted to know, you know, through all of their experiences, what is the world about? Uh, and unfortunately, they don't have the answers either. I mean, I have, as I said, many people that I've communicated with in the sense of trying to learn from them. And there are things that I have learned. Absolutely. I mean, when you reflect back, and as I said, I'm a boomer, so the time ahead of me is much shorter than what's behind me, and when you are in that sort of position, you do reevaluate. So my father, who just passed away this September, uh, you know, he had a very strong personality in the sense of conviction, and I his word was his promise, and I think that is one of the things that I've taken in particular from him.
So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Well, I'm still, I'm there's a woman that started my book. And my book is Branding Queens. It's about 20 entrepreneurial women, and the woman that started the whole journey for me was Barb Nicole Clicquot, and that's the champagne Veuve Clicquot.
Yeah.
And she started her business in 1810. Now, her husband and her had started their own winery making champagne. He passed away suddenly of yellow fever, but she continued. She didn't have to. I mean, in back in 1810, women were second uh, citizens in the sense of they had very few rights. Uh, I'd love to spend time with her and to find out really what. I mean, I've in my book, I've explained some of the things I believe happened, but what was going on in her head to take on this? I mean, Napoleon Bonaparte was terrorizing the countryside. He was at war with everybody. Uh, this was not a easy place to be, and then be a woman on top of that with a business. And so I'd love to spend some time with her and find out exactly what was going on in her head.
So every day you wake up, there's a motivation to do what you want to do, to achieve what you want to get done, to help people. What is that for you? What's your motivation to be who you are every day?
So I want to learn. If I haven't learned something in the day, then I haven't really challenged myself. Uh, we do not have, as I told you, I've known people that have been in this earth for over 100 years, and they didn't have all the answers either. So I like to learn, but I also like to give back as I learn, because when I learn something, I'm really excited to share it. And sometimes to my detriment, in the sense of, others going, oh yeah, okay, here comes Derrick. He's going to, or Kim's going to come and, give me another idea or another point of view that haven't approached or thought about.
So what's one of your favorite client success stories you've ever been involved with?
Okay. You know what? There's no big one. There's big ones in the sense of revenue, there those kinds of things. But for me, it was actually the small things. It's the small things that uh, people come back to me years after and go, "Thank you for helping me get through this situation, helping me see something different." I, to me, that's where I get really excited that I've been able to share an idea or share a different point of view that opened up another world. And it could be from a business perspective, it could be from a personal perspective, but being able to see new opportunities. And sometimes we get so, locked into our way of thinking or way of doing things that we don't see, the other opportunities out there. And it's those opportunities. I love being able to go and going, oh, this is new. I've never seen this before. What about that? And connect it with this. So connecting the dots is, I think, one of my strengths. And it's one of the things I love doing because I get amazed that I've been able to connect one idea to another one that has no association whatsoever.
What's been one of the best pieces of advice you've ever gotten?
So I, there was a fellow that I worked for when I was a kid, and he was uh, German. He had a very strong German accent. So he'd lived through the Second World War. I don't know exactly what role he played, but he lived through it. He and his wife were very quiet. They were neighbors, and I worked for him. And he was a skilled craftsman. He'd have a workshop that had, I mean, unbelievable amount of tools, and I was fascinated. So I worked for him, and one of the things he always said to me, he said, "Don't worry about the money. The money will come. If you are good at what you do, it will come. What you should do every day is look back and say, did I do a great job? And if you can walk away every day, whenever you did, and think that, yes, I did a great job, everything else will fall into place."
So, of everything you've accomplished so far in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Okay. So, my kids.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an easy one, right?
right.
It is one and again, go back to the pandemic. One of the things, and my kids are adults. Uh, so I'm really fortunate now. I can have really deep conversations with them, and I can walk with them because they enjoy. One of them will come along with me in one of my walks because they know I'm going to be out there every day. And it's making and bringing people into life. I mean, the thing I tried teaching my kids, and it's probably the hardest thing, is if you believe you can, you can.
Yeah,
If you believe you can't, there's no way.
yeah.
And so it is you're in control of whatever you can do and what you can succeed at. And that is the hardest thing. And again, I know I don't think that way. So how do you train somebody else? But I do watch my kids, and they do succeed. So I hopefully have been able to instill some of that. But uh, I mean, fear is a huge motivation for a lot of us.
So, everyone out there has a perception of you: family, friends, clients, colleagues, readers, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I I'm just a person that likes watching and trying to decipher what it really means. Uh, Marketing, is a fascinating. Branding is a fascinating in the sense of being able to decipher customers' needs, uh, get to the real reason why. Uh, I like the why. If anyone asks you, who am I? They go, oh yes, prepare that he's going to ask why, and he's going to ask not just one why. He's going to ask two, maybe three, maybe even four whys to get to the real reason. And that's kind of me. I'm always inquisitive to try and find out what is the real reason behind it, because there's usually something. And when I do my research now, from a book perspective, or when I'm writing something, face value, it's so easy. There's so misconceptions out there because it's easy to just pick something from the surface, but really it's actually something much deeper uh, that has transpired, that has changed the situation, but also has created the situation. So understanding the why, I think, is probably the most important thing for me, and I think that's kind of what people see when they actually meet me.
So the book is Branding Queens. If anyone wants to pick that up, learn more about you, anything about your world, where can they go?
LinkedIn. They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Kim Derrick Rozdeba, Rozdeba. I can be found there. You could just Google Rozdeba, Rozdeba, and you'll find me. You'll find the book, my website. You'll find my blog. I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim Derrick, thank you so much for your time, your story, and your passion. Best of luck with everything, sir.
Thank you very much, Joe. I really enjoyed this.
Me too.